Welcome to our sponsored program's Budgeting Basics. These videos are designed to help you understand the budgeting process and enable you to create a draft budget for your sponsored project. Today we are talking about personnel costs for JMU faculty and staff. Now, these videos don't replace working with our grants specialists. Our grants specialists here in OSP are experts in the nuances of uniform guidance and know details beyond what we will get into here. Our grant specialists also read through the rules for your specific program to make sure to catch any unique rules that apply. Your assigned grant specialist will work with you individually to construct a budget that meets your needs and complies with all the sponsor and JMU rules and regulations. Having said that, we know that there are a lot of questions around where numbers come from in these budgets, and folks would like to be able to put together draft budgets. For example, to be able to estimate the costs for their project to know if it's too ambitious for the program they're considering. So the goal of these videos is to give you an overview to help you get started on the budgeting process. Today we are focusing on personnel costs with a focus on current JMU employees. When we think of personnel costs, I would divide them into three types, which fall into two categories. The first is this question of whether you're receiving additional pay beyond your typical JMU salary. Within this category of employees receiving additional compensation on top of their regular salary, there's two types. The first comes up if the employee is not a full year, 12-month employee. In this case, there's some period of the year when JMU does not consider the employee as currently performing work for the university, and this is true even if their pay is distributed year-round. For example, as per JMU Policy 1306, faculty on academic year contracts are considered to perform 9 months of work for the university and then have 3 summer months when they are not working for JMU. During this period, they can be compensated for work on a sponsored project. Now, I do recognize that in a lot of other contexts around the university, academic year employees are called 10-month employees. The reason that we do things different in sponsored projects can be found within Policy 1306. The second type within this category is when employees perform additional work on top of their regular job duties during their contract period and receive additional compensation for that additional work. It's important to be aware that there are both internal and external limitations to this. Internally, employees in academic affairs should especially pay attention to the provost's additional compensation guidelines, although there are policies that apply to all university employees regarding additional compensation. Externally, OMB Circular A21 also introduces additional requirements. The one that I think causes the most problems for faculty here at JMU is that the work must be either across departmental lines or for a different division or college than the employee usually works for. Another case is that it can occur at a remote location that is not the employee's regular workplace. The second major category is when the sponsored program pays the university, but the employee doesn't receive additional compensation on top of their regular salary. What's going on here is that JMU has assigned some of their work time to the sponsored project. The sponsored project then reimburses the university for this time. Perhaps the most common of this category is course releases, in which professors work on the sponsored project instead of teaching a class. It is possible to reassign other time, such as service or scholarship time. Please note that even if your time, or effort in sponsored programs lingo, is reassigned to the sponsored project, your tenure and promotion or other job performance requirements might not change, especially if the sponsored project work counts toward those requirements. The good news is that although these three different types and two categories might seem complicated, all of these end up looking pretty similar when you actually build a budget. The difference shows up in the justification, which is when you explain to the sponsor what the money is going towards and why it is necessary for your project. So now let's focus on the budgeting specifically. To proceed, we're going to assume that you know two things about the employee you'd like to support on your sponsored project. You know their salary, specifically the institutional base salary. This doesn't include any overload pay or bonuses or things like that, but it can include things like extra pay for serving as academic unit head. The other thing that you need to know is their contract length. For example, whether they are a full year, 12-month employee, or an academic year employee. And remember, as per JMU Policy 1306, for sponsored projects purposes, academic year employees are presumed to do 9 person months of work for the university in each year. Now, there are a few folks here on other contract lengths, and your grant specialist would be happy to help you work things out for them. By federal regulation, we have to divide the institutional base salary by the contract length to find the compensation rate for sponsored programs. Generally, we charge salary in person months. So, for example, if an academic year faculty member makes $90,000, then their rate is $90,000 divided by 9 months, which gives $10,000 per person month of effort. Occasionally, we will use hourly or weekly rates. If you need to do this, please speak to your grant specialist. So what does this look like on a budget? Before we dive into the Excel spreadsheet, here's the key information you need to know. If your employee is on an academic year contract, you're going to divide by 9 for the 9 months, and then you're going to use the columns for summer months, for off-contract payments, or academic months, for additional compensation or reassigned time. On the other hand, if your employee is on a full year contract, you're going to divide by 12 for 12 months, and then we'll use calendar months. For other contract types, please work with your grants specialist. So now let's see where we can find the templates on OSP's website. This is our website. In this bar at the left, you'll see Budget Development. If you click here, you can see that the first option is Overview, Templates, and Resources. This brings you to this page, where scrolling down, you can see our templates. There's an NSF-specific budget template, as well as an SF424 budget template and an R&R budget template. For the rest of this video, we're going to use this generic budget template so that it's as broad as possible. Here we have that generic template that I mentioned, and now we're going to talk about how to use it. Regardless of whether you have an academic year, full year, or other contract length employee, the first thing to do is to put their salary into the base salary. So for example, if our person makes $90,000 a year, we'll enter that into the base salary. Let's consider the academic year case first. So in that case, we will use either academic months or summer months. Let's start with summer months. Let's say this employee is asking for 2 summer months of salary support. What we would do after entering the 2 under summer months is go to year 1. We put an equal sign because that tells Excel that we're doing a calculation. We would take the base salary and divide by 9 for the 9 months of work that they do for JMU in a year. And then we would multiply that by the summer months. Hitting enter gives the corresponding salary amount. If you're using one of our other templates, some of these other columns might also automatically update. I'll talk about those in a few minutes. On the other hand, what if instead of requesting summer months, they're instead requesting academic months? As I said before, we use these if they're requesting additional compensation or if they're requesting reassigned time. So in academic months, let's say that this person is going to request a course release. Course releases operate a little bit differently college by college, and your grants specialist would be happy to help you figure out what it is for your college. In this case, we're going to say that the course release works out to be 0.9 person months of effort. Now, you might see that this is showing a 1 now. However, if we go into the bar, you can say that it's actually still 0.9. That happens sometimes in these templates, and don't worry if that happens to you. The actual value is what's in this bar. If you want to see that it's really 0.9, we can increase the number of decimal places, which is something that I like to do. Here, though, in year 1, we do something similar. We take that base salary. They're still an academic year employee, so we divide by 9, and then we multiply by the academic months. you can see here what our value is. If they are going to request both academic months and summer months, then we can just add those together, as I am doing here. Okay. The columns labeled match, we're not going to deal with in this video. We'll talk about those when we deal with cash match or in-kind match, cost sharing in our later video. So as I said, some columns, such as especially year 2, year 3, may update automatically if you're using one of our other templates. In this generic template, they don't, and that's because some sponsors do allow you to include an estimated cost of living increase when you do your budget, and other sponsors don't. Let's consider the case of a sponsor that doesn't allow for a cost of living increase. In this case, in year 2, we would just set it equal to the year 1 value. Then in year 3, we would set it equal to the year 2 value, and so on, depending on the length of time for your grant. You can see that the running total over here on the right automatically updates as we put in values for year 2, year 3, and so on. However, when we can, we like to include cost of living increases because we generally have been receiving those. We here at the Office of Sponsored Programs like to budget with an estimated 3% cost of living increase. The way we can do this in year 2 is to say equals again, and then 1.03, the 3 is from the 3% cost of living increase, times our year 1 value. Then in year 3, we would again do equals 1.03 for that 3% cost of living increase. And then we would take our year 2 value because the year 3 cost of living increase is on top of the one that you already received in year 2. Now I do want to note that if something should happen and we would not receive a cost of living increase, JMU would not allow you to draw down more than your current salary, the corresponding amount, from your sponsored program. So in some sense, these are estimated personnel costs when we include the cost of living increase. So this is how we would handle things for an academic year employee. What if we instead had a full year employee? Let's consider that case for our imaginary co-PI. So we'll consider someone with a salary of $110, and for full year employees, they don't have summer months available since they're working for JMU during the academic year and the salary and the summer. Instead, we use calendar months. So let's say that this person is requesting 1.15 calendar months. And again, you can see that it cuts off the decimal, but I'm just going to show more decimal places so we can see that it's in fact the 1.15. What we do here is we take that year 1, we'll do the base salary, and now we divide by 12 because they are a 12-month employee, and then we multiply by our number of calendar months. And you can see that our running personnel costs total at the bottom automatically updates to include this. And then we can also do our future years with or without the cost of living increase, depending on what the sponsor allows and your preference. This covers how we put in the personnel cost in terms of person months of effort for academic year and calendar year months. Again, if you have any questions, please be sure to reach out to your grants specialist. We have one last piece to discuss, and that's fringe benefits. For most employees, JMU has traditionally only requested sponsored programs cover its share of FICA. FICA funds Social Security and Medicare and has 2 parts. One part employees fund out of their pay, and the other part is paid by employers. Whenever a sponsored program contributes to your salary, either through additional compensation or through reassigned time, we budget for the sponsored program to pay JMU's share of FICA. This is actually already built into our budget template. The second section here, fringe benefits, includes FICA through these calculations. As we added our personnel costs above, you can see that these columns were automatically completed with the associated costs. We do not currently budget for the sponsored programs to pay for the rest of most employees' other fringe benefits. This means that we don't charge the sponsored program for your health insurance, retirement contributions, or your other benefits. The exception for this is for fully grant-funded employees. If you are budgeting to support a fully grant-funded employee on your sponsored program, your grant specialist will assist you in determining the rate. Let's say this rate works out to be 35%. Then you would enter that into this first column here, and for clarity, we would tend to change this column as well to say full or full fringe. You can see that as I updated the rate here, these columns automatically changed to reflect the new costs. Your grant specialist, as I said, will work with HR to determine the correct rate to put into that first column using the employee's actual benefits. However, you may be able to estimate this using the employee's pay stub, if you have access to it, and or JMU's online benefits calculator. We will see the online benefits calculator in our next video, and so I'm not going to talk about it in detail now. However, if you want to give this a try on your own, I'll give you a little bit of information to help you out. This is a sample of the information we would get from HR. You can see the Social Security, group insurance, health insurance, and other associated costs here. You would want to look at the pay stub or the online benefits calculator to try to determine the equivalent values. Here we're looking at monthly values. Please make sure to use the actual costs and not the percentages, especially if you are using the online benefits calculator. Then we take the total of the benefits and remove the wages, divide the total benefits by the wages, and convert to a percentage. In this case, we can see that the percentage is about 50%, and that's what we would put into the first column. Again, this full fringe rate is currently used only for fully grant-funded employees. Other employees only need to use the FICA contribution, which is already included within the budget templates. In this video, we have gone over how to include personnel costs for existing JMU employees on sponsored projects budgets. I hope this helps you understand these costs and even be able to include them on your draft budget. Please do not hesitate to reach out to the Office of Sponsored Programs with any questions. And as always, your grant specialist would be pleased to assist you in budget development.